The National Democratic Congress celebrated its 30th anniversary on 10th of June this year. Now, the party has made a lot of contributions to the development of this nation, Ghana, but 30 years since its founding, how has the NDC matured as a political party, and what does the future hold for them? We will see a return of the party to the corridors of power in 2024, or they are just going or preparing for another loss. To discuss this and more, I have with me Mr. Sylvester Mensah, a leading member of the NDC and a former CEO of the National Health Insurance Authority. And you are watching The Hard Truth. My name is Nana Akusia Kunidwa Santi Samuels. Sylvester, you're welcome to The Hard Truth once again.
My pleasure, as always.
Thank you so much for being here this evening. Now, Sly, the NDC celebrated its anniversary, 30 years anniversary this month. You have been with the party, I would say, in the early days. How would you describe the development of the party over the years?
Well, let me say that, I didn't join the party. I was part of the formation of the party. I was part of the team that was set up a year before the formation of the party, essentially to sensitize Ghanaians over or about the formation of a party. We had a 5-member team. I was a member secretary. We had one B.S. Akwete, who is currently the Babu Ulomo of the Nwa traditional area. He was a chairman from the CDR, and I was member secretary as head of the National Mobilization Program at the time. And then we had a June 4 movement. The regional head was one Bernard Sunu, and then we had the Democratic Youth League of Ghana, represented by one Kweku Atiasi, and the 31st December Women's Movement, represented by Madam Patience Duamepo. So we had a 5-member team that combed the entire region to inform people about the possible formation of a party and to get their input and enrollment until the party was formally formed. Indeed, our committee returned a positive verdict that the people of the Greater Accra region were ready and anxious to join a party led by then Chairman Rawlings, who became President Rawlings. So 30 years. I must also add that 30 years ago, I was the regional youth organizer of the party, the very first regional youth organizer in the Greater Accra region. And 28 years ago, 2 years after, I became the regional secretary of the party.
I see. So from your experience as a leading member or founding member of the NDC.
A foundation member,
I see.
Perhaps. There's a difference between a
founding
member
and a foundation.
So
member. As you explained, the foundation member.
I guess that is right.
I hear you, of the NDC. What has been the major attraction of the party? And what about, the party resonates well with you? What of the party resonates well with you?
Well, let me end your earlier question asking about 30 years and how the party has matured to this stage. We would want to look at this from 3 perspectives: the structure, the systems, and perhaps the culture. Indeed, changes have occurred. Looking at organizations and society through a dialectical perspective, nature is always in motion. And so we have had some consistent changes in the party. In terms of structure, we have moved away from the original structure, and we currently have several appendages.
Which was what? What was the original structure? What is it now?
Well, we have the professional forum, we have the intellectual groups, we have the Zongo caucuses, we have the team, and all these were not part of the original structure of the party. But of course, these have been growing. The party structure has been growing, and currently this is what we have. We used to have a single chairman. It became a dual chairmanship at the national level. Today we have a single chairman. And then we have the numbers of vice chairmen of the party has also gone through some transition, and a host of others. We had situations where entire 6 vice chairmen were elected. Today, 3 are elected, 3 are appointed. And so in terms of structure, we've had a number of changes. In terms of systems, Of course, today you could register electronically. In those days, it was manual registration. Our communications have become a little more sophisticated than what we had in the past. And of course, in terms of campaign in the past, just the NDC colors and the umbrella was enough for a T-shirt. President Rawlings at the time never had his picture on every T-shirt. The party was marketing a lot more the party than the personality. And so it fed into the understanding that the party gives birth to its members and leaders. And
So
so
again, what about the whole party resonates with you as a person? What about it? What about the party resonates with you?
well, I am a social democrat, and we have a social democratic party. Social democracy has to do a lot more. Well, the symbol for social democracy is the rose flower. The rose flower signifies love, affection. It signifies the idea of supporting the underprivileged, the not-haves, indigents, and the vulnerable in society. And so this is a party that believes in social inclusion, that believes in social safety nets, a party that believes in collectivism, a party that believes in social
Great, but
infrastructure.
fantastic.
And so these are the values that I...
But when you reflect on the growth of the NDC, are you impressed with the current state of the party, or do you believe that you could have done more, or there is much to be done?
Well, I think that every party may have its challenges. Okay, if you look at perhaps the socialist model, which perhaps formed the basis of the formation of our party, we have very clearly defined leadership structure and layers of leadership. And so it is very easy to determine who leads the party at what particular time and why. Our system is a little disjointed, and we have several layers of leadership, and these layers have counter-crossed each other in such a way that there is no clear... There's not been any clear...
What's causing these overlaps in the structures of leadership?
I think that has to do with leadership. Leadership has failed to define, as it were, succession.
Millions of people, Ghanaians, belong to the party. Let us understand. So what exactly are you expecting? Foundation member of the NDC, you've seen that things are going wrong in terms of leadership or the structure of leadership. From where you sit, what can be done to straighten it or make it what it's supposed to be?
Well, I think that the party itself is on a self-corrective path. The party itself has realized and appreciated these challenges and difficulties, and various measures and arrangements have been put in place to address this. For instance, the party has now, as part of its structure, established a party school, which party school helps in bringing people up ideologically, and also to understand the general world outlook when it comes to politics, in order to...
So it's not open for just NDC members, but for everyone? Or just
well, it's largely and significantly for NDC members. And the name is the party school.
I see.
And so you must be a member of the party to enroll or to be enrolled into the school. These are all measures to, as it were, bring people up and create and develop leaders into the future. So I think that the party is on course. And
your party, NDC, again, was founded on the principles of probity, integrity, and I would say accountability. 30 years on.
On probity,
integrity,
probity, accountability, openness, and
all
social
of that.
justice.
Fantastic. So 30 years on, does the party still hold dear to these principles? And how has it, reflected in the actions of the party, especially within members and leadership?
Well, these values and principles are like moving targets. They keep changing depending on the social dynamics within the country. And, but largely and significantly, the NDC has firmly held to these principles with little, as it were, changes in the margins. Of course, it has to do with the tenets of politics that has not changed, which has to do with the intersection of politics and economics, and the fact that it takes the economics to feed the politics, and the politics and economics have a kind of a symbiotic relationship. I think that within our political context, this relationship has grown faster than it should be, and has led to more of a moneycracy. So politics has become so much of money. The initial culture of voluntarism seemed to have waned and giving way to politics of money, pay and I do. I think that this direction.
How did this start? Because remember, at the revolution period, people followed your leader because of his charisma, because of what the NDC stood for: accountability, openness, like you rightly said. Now it's based on money. So what does it say to you as a party?
Well, I mean, the NDC held firm and has continued to hold firm to its values. But of course, within our society, we have other political parties like the MPP, and whatever happens in the MPP seem to have some impact on the NDC. And so if the NDC was largely a voluntary organization with a high spirit of voluntarism, where people were
what
willing...
did the MPP do that reflected on you as a party?
Well, MPP, you know what, I mean, you understand that better than I do.
I'm listening.
You know about how money determined and continue to determine everything in their party, and how
that's not
delegates...
within your party.
And how delegates...
That is, are you saying that's not so within your party?
Would you allow
NDC?
me, if you allow me, I'll be able to give you some understanding. So how they deal with their delegates by way of rewarding them. Let me use reward for the want of a better word and not to sound too derogatory. The way they reward their party delegates and members and whatever sort of generated some anxiety within our party. That is it the case that members of or delegates from the other party can receive this for what we do for free? No. Let us also look at how, we could also... And so this...
So what
attitudes
are you saying,
and tendencies,
that paying delegates,
these attitudes and tendencies...
Are you saying paying delegates for votes started with the NPP?
Of course.
You are just, tagging along.
I'm not saying we are tagging along. It's something that we are trying to fight very hard. It's extremely difficult because you are operating in a very open space where people see what happens in other political parties. And of course, I mean, there's a way in which it rubs on
but
others.
I remember very well that your founder, the late Jerry John Rawlings, had on several occasions publicly accused your party again and the leadership of abandoning the ideals of the party. Has the NDC betrayed these values? We talked about that before, as the founder suggested.
I'm not sure about that. I don't think so. I mean, of course, there have been a few challenges and difficulties, but the perfidy of an individual cannot serve as a basis for redefining the whole. And so people have names, and if an individual is found wanting, it does not necessarily represent the whole. In a situation where an attitude appears to be widespread, then it becomes the dominant attitude, which could define the whole. And so we need to look at it from that perspective. Of course, our late founder, President Rawlings, were quite emotional about our principles and our values, and will not spare any opportunity to, as it were, re-echo them, and also...
So leadership didn't betray the values of the party, as he accused or stated earlier?
No, I don't think so.
I see. Now, the motto of the NDC is unity, stability, and development. Currently, how united is the party? And how has the, addressing the issues of factionalism, how are you addressing those issues in the party?
Well, unity has always remained a relative term. There's no absolute unity anywhere, even among twins from the same belly. You can't have absolute unity. And for a huge
From
organization,
victory on to victory. Can you sing your song again?
From victory unto victory, the NDC shall lead a stable democratic Ghana. Our strength in unity.
In unity, and it's part of your ideals and it's part of everything. So if you're telling me that even twins are like, so that means
I'm saying
you are abandoning part of your, what you stand for as a party.
I'm trying to explain to you to understand that unity has always remained a relative term. There are relativities. It is the degree of unity. You cannot have a huge political party like the NDC that commands almost half of our Ghanaian electorate, and you want to think that we're going to have a common mindset about our developmental agenda. We may even, in situations where we have the same focus, the same objective, we may have different approaches to achieving the same objective. To that extent, the NDC is very united, but of course, there are interest groups going into an election. A wants to be chairman, B wants to be secretary, A wants to be organizer.
Is that not normal? I mean, isn't
that is normal. But of course, that also has a way of generating heat within the structures of the party.
How do we deal with that, especially with the factions that you are?
No, you can't deal with that. Those are natural human tendencies. And of course, when it gets to...
You need a united front to win an election.
Well,
so how are you dealing with factionalism within the party?
We are a relatively united party. I am not talking about factionalism. I have not introduced the word factionalism into our conversation.
I'm asking you.
Well, unless you have some factions you want to put on the table for us to discuss.
Do you have factions within the party in the NDC?
I wouldn't say so.
I see.
We have individuals with different viewpoints and different approaches to achieving the same purpose. We have individuals and groups in the party with different preferences, and I wouldn't call that factions.
Still on the unity front, some members of your party has, encouraged that leadership to extend an olive branch to Madame Konadu Agyeman-Rawlings because she has really contributed a lot to the party. What's your thought on this?
Well, I haven't really examined that conversation. I heard her daughter, Honorable Dr. Zenato, make a statement to that effect. And I've also heard a few others make similar comments.
Like her contribution.
I have also heard contrary comments from other people. Unfortunately, I don't have a clear position on that.
Has she made contributions to the party?
Of course she has.
So as someone who has made contributions to the party,
she's a foundation member and a founding member of the party. What efforts are you making,
or your thoughts on the efforts, to bring her back into the party?
I think that is a leadership issue. Let me say that she was not sacked from the NDC. She left the NDC. And I'm sure that any day she wants to come back to the NDC, the party will be willing to embrace her.
You're still watching The Hard Truth. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Hard Truth. I still have with me a foundation member of the National Democratic Congress, Mr. Sylvester Mensah, former Chief Executive Officer of the National Health Insurance Authority. Now, what do you see as the greatest achievement of the party during these 30 years? What has been the greatest achievement of the party?
Well, we can talk about electrification in this country, extending electricity to the, across the country. We were able to achieve not less than 80% coverage across the country. Issues on about water across the country. But beyond that, we could also count our achievements with regards to health, our health sector, putting up of health facilities across the country, teaching hospitals, regional hospitals. We have constructed the highest number of regional hospitals.
Why weren't these achievements translated in the pockets of Ghanaians? Because at that time, I remember vividly, people were, or we were still complaining the economy was still tough. So yes, all these things, fine, but why couldn't you manage the economy right?
Well, let me say that quite apart from health, we also have achievements in the educational sector. We have established far more universities in this country and supervised the establishment of various private universities more than any other government.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. But, we complete school and unemployment rate was still high. So, yes, these are great achievements.
Right. So, in terms of achievements, we're also looking at roads, infrastructure. We are looking at markets and a host of others. Let me say that under the current government, the Bawumia and Ado government, not a single public hospital has been established, not a single university has been established, not a single market has been constructed, and we need to look at facts within that context as compared to what the NDC has achieved in this country.
We need to know 30 years, your contribution to this nation is very significant. So again, achievements, you've mentioned a lot of infrastructure. You've mentioned a lot of infrastructure, but I'm asking you, Sylvester, foundation member, when you're doing these things, you wanted to better the lives of Ghanaians, yes. So at that time, you're not in power right now. At that time, we're still complaining. You were not feeling it in our pockets. Why?
Well, I think that Ghanaians can see clearly between the NDC and the MPP, looking at our current circumstances and where this country is heading. We are currently walking the edge of a cliff. It's just a little button and Ghana may fall off the cliff, God forbid. We can experience real hardship in this country.
Why didn't you manage the economy better with all these achievements that you have mentioned, Sylvester? You've mentioned all these great achievements. So why couldn't you manage the economy better?
NDC is a better manager of the Ghanaian economy. And just give me some little time, let me take you through some of these.
I'm listening.
When the NDC left power in January 2017, our total national debt stock was around 121 billion. Our current national debt stock is in the neighborhood of 390 billion. And so this current government has added well over 240 billion to our national debt stock. Let me also add that within the last 4 years of President Mahama, and allow me to build on this, within the last 4 years of President Mahama, total revenue that he had at his disposal to manage this country was around 86 billion Ghana cedis. Within the first 4 years under President Nana Akufo-Addo, the total revenue they had at their disposal to manage this economy was in excess of 156 billion. Let me also add that under President Mahama and in our oil fields, Ghana was getting about 70,000 barrels of crude oil a day. We had worked on the 10 project and the Sankofa project.
If I give you time, you talk about all the things that
wait,
you
wait,
did.
wait, wait,
Again.
wait. Let me
Let
me summarize
I
it.
would want to know.
Let me summarize this point.
Go on.
Under President Nana, we are having over 200,000 barrels a day. Now, President Mahama and President Mills put together contracted loans of about 110 billion within 8 years. Within 5 years of President Nana, we have contracted well over 260 billion loans. Whereas the Mahama administration can point to several development projects. I've mentioned health, I mentioned education, I mentioned markets, I mentioned roads. This quantum of resources that we have received under the Nana presidency, what is there to show about it?
You lost the elections massively in 2016, and that was the first time in history that a certain government would just lose massively after just one term. So again, if you did amazing, you mentioned all these projects that you did, education-wise, road-wise, health-wise. Why were you voted out?
Now let me correct you that we didn't lose after one term. We have had a 2-term cycle of 8 years.
But you were saying, so now you clarified this.
And the NDC as a political party, you haven't allowed me to land. The NDC as a political party had run the full 2-term cycle. First 4 years under President Mills and the second 4 years under President Mahama. Of course, President Mahama had a few months at the tail end of President Mills's leadership. And so we had our full 8-year cycle. And so, no political party in this country has, as it were, transcended that cycle, that our electorate.
So you lost because what time for you to go was 8 years and you had to go. It wasn't because of your performance. What are you saying?
I think that we lost after 8 years.
Sylvester, your party had a poor track record under President Mahama. You can talk about, scandals like the 5.1 million scandal. We can talk about the 850,000 bias branding scandal. Sada is there, and the guinea fowl business and all of that. So, as a party that prides itself once again, with probity, accountability, and fairness and openness and all that, this is like a great indictment on your party. Wouldn't you say that?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think that comparatively, of course, as I said earlier, the perfidy of an individual cannot be used as a measure in defining the collective. And we need to get that quite straight. It is only when it becomes a dominant trend that we could use in defining, as we can define the MPP today as a very corrupt party, because the corruption within the MPP is so pervasive, so overwhelming, and Ghanaians are beginning to worry, and they are extremely disappointed in their choice of voting for the MPP for another 4 years to complete their 8-year cycle. I think that we have gotten to a point where the people of this country have clearly assessed the two main political parties, the NDC and the MPP. And I can assure you that Ghanaians will have a very hard time wanting to vote the MPP back into government.
Because NDC is a better option?
Of course, the NDC has always been... So we should
forget about the Omoyomi scandal.
The NDC has
we forget about the Suba issue. We just forget about all the things that happened
we have looked at the PPA contract where an appointee of government has superintendent over contract awards and appropriated them. We have seen the PDS. We have seen the JAPA, which shadow keeps emerging. We have seen the 500 missing excavators. We have seen the missing tricycles. We have seen the bust scandal. We can go on and on and on and on.
Are we doing the blame game government?
As we speak today, the issue of COVID funding and accountability is a major
elections
crisis
in
for
Ghana
this
or
country.
parties are
And so
just
when you want to
focusing.
compare
Let
the
me finish.
NDC, when you want
Right.
to compare the NDC
In
and
comparing
the
the
NPP,
NDC, it's not a blame game. Like you're saying, we did this, that person did that. We vote for you with the aim of improving the lives of Ghanaians. So it's now like, okay, do we forget all the things that happen? I mentioned Goyomi. It's a tall list, but these are the ones that resonate well with people. Do we forget everything that happened and say, okay, it's almost 8 years, so it's our turn now? Is that what you're saying? We should just vote for you because it's like you said.
No, I don't think
it's
so.
a thing in Ghana now, 8 years.
No, I don't think so. I think when you look at some indicators, for instance, inflation has moved from 11%, around 11% as at January 2017, to around 29%, which is a measure of very bad government. Number two, our debt to GDP ratio has risen from 56, 57% in January 2017 to almost 83% as we speak here today. Our national debt, our national debt stock has moved from 121 billion to over 390 billion. I mean, are these no clear indicators of bad governance and bad management of our economy? Today, Parliament is asking for accountability with regards to funds that came from outside to support in the COVID pandemic in excess of 34 billion. I mean, government has not been able to go to Parliament and simply explain how these funds
we'll
have
talk
been
about that
used.
in a bit. But again, NDC portrays itself as a social democratic party that is focused on welfare distribution to the poor, vulnerable, and people disadvantaged in the society. However, look around, just think about this. Most of the pro-poor policy interventions, NHIS, LEAP, school funding programs, capitation grants, SHS, free feeding, were introduced, or free SHS were introduced by this NDP government, and which identifies with liberalism. Why is this contradiction?
Well, let me first start with the National Health Insurance Scheme. That is the most pervasive, that is the widest and the most extensive social protection policy. The health insurance policy began in the very late 80s into the early 90s, where the NDC government began the pilot scheme in Nsawam, Dodowa, in Nkuranza, and a few others. Various reports had been put together for the establishment of a national health insurance scheme. The NPP, thankfully, under President Kufuor, took hold of that policy initiative and went ahead to implement it. Now, in implementing it, you would observe that at the time, there were very sharp division between the NDC and the NPP in Parliament, to the extent that the NDC had to walk out, primarily because what we envisaged as a national health insurance scheme was completely different from what was being, as it were, instituted. But of course, it went ahead. Under the NDC leadership in 2009, the entire law establishing the health insurance scheme, Act 650, gave way to Act 851 of 2012. And so there has been a complete change in the health insurance scheme that you see today. What you see today is a baby of the National Democratic Congress. The logo changed, the vision, the mission changed, the whole concept of developing medium to long-term strategies.
So what other social interventions
that has changed?
Let
me also add that if the National Health Insurance Scheme today is seen as an institution that has made progress, all the policies and programs that make it what it is today was under the leadership of President Mahama. Of course, at the time I was at the steering wheel. Even what we call today electronic renewal of cards, which is what perhaps the NPP can, for any stretch of imagination, assign to themselves, was an initiative that began under my leadership of the scheme. And I mean, there are documentations to prove that we started all this.
Right,
There is not a single policy initiative
Sylvester,
that has been added to improve the health insurance scheme from 2017 up to date. Perhaps we are now going to see something useful. We see a new chief executive, a young man I really admire, very hardworking. And I believe that for the very first time, perhaps a very useful leader has been appointed for the health insurance scheme. And we hope to see some improvements in the scheme.
So tell us, flatter us, give us the interventions that, the social interventions that your party gave this country.
Well, I mean, there are several social intervention policies. I don't want to go into all the details of social intervention.
Mention them. Mention them. Now, the NDC subscribes to the ideology of social democracy. However, it's been argued that over the years, many of your members have lost touch with this ideology. Even your General Secretary, Asedin Ketia, admitted that it was a major reason for the establishing the school that you just mentioned. Has this improved?
Yeah, with the establishment of the school and with the training programs that we have undertaken, going from region to region and trying to bring our members up to speed with our values, our principles, and what have you. I think that to a very large extent, that has been achieved. But of course, it's a moving target. It's work in progress. You can't achieve all that. It's a process. So it's an ongoing process, and a lot more people would have to be reached, and we are on top of that.
You're watching The Hard Truth. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You are still watching The Hard Truth. Sylvester Mensah is a foundation member of the National Democratic Congress. Sylvester, members of your party, I would say, have taken it for granted that Ghanaians will automatically vote for the NDC because they are currently not pleased with the performance of the current government. But the reality is that Ghanaians are now, disenchanted with both NDC and NPP and have decided not to vote at all. So have you factored in voter apathy in your permutations?
Have
you factored in voter apathy in your permutations when you are planning? Have you factored in voter apathy?
Well, let me quickly come back 2 steps and then we'll get in there. Under the NDC government as a social democratic party with a social democratic agenda, you would remember that the NDC began the free SHS, but on an incremental basis. We began with the free compulsory basic education, and then we also had the free sandals to our schools that we distributed sandals. Sanitary pads became an issue, and our adversaries began to attack sanitary pads in ways that were unimaginable. The distribution of free fertilizers, the distribution of outboard motors to farmers, and a subsidy for farmers with regards to their fuel, the premix fuel, and a host of others. We could also talk about the GET fund that was established as a way of addressing some of these issues. And so issues relating to social infrastructure and all that are all within the context of social intervention. Now, with regards to voter apathy, I think that the current government is getting voters very, very apathetic, and they are getting very, 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 very worried. Currently, anywhere you go in this country, you would find voters who would tell you that it was a huge mistake voting out the NDC, and they would tabulate reasons the NDC would have to come back to continue its good works. Let me also quickly add that debt per capita, when you share our total debt stock for every Ghanaian to pay, as at January 2017, our debt per capita was around 4,000. And so if you share our national debt to all Ghanaians, every Ghanaian will pay 4,000. As we speak today, debt per capita has risen beyond 11,000. And so today, every Ghanaian is owing 11,000. That clearly tells you that the managers of this economy.
Sylvester, I've come across a lot of Ghanaians who claim that they are only going to vote if something is offered to them, money. If it indeed comes to this, your party will obviously be at a disadvantage, wouldn't that be?
Well, we don't believe in giving money for votes.
Then you're going to lose the election.
We're not going to lose the elections. Ghanaians are wide awake. Ghanaians have realized that in the past, they have sold their votes. People have given them money and they have voted for the wrong person. This time, Ghanaians are awake and they are going to read in between the lines. The MPP is leaving office and the MPP is out in spirit. Is there a ghost that we are seeing out there in government? We, the NDC, are coming back to power in January 2025. And Ghanaians have assured us of that.
Because God willing, how did Ghanaians assure you?
We have done some surveys that have returned some a positive verdict. But beyond that, we've also done a number of group
Sly, you have contested for an election before. I'm sure you went out campaigning, and then what was the result for you? I mean, we all know what happened to you, the last time you had the presidential, election. So yes, people will tell you we are going to vote for you. The economy is hard, but at the end of the day, money speaks.
Oh well, so again, let me
again, voter apathy. How will you deal with it? How are you covering all angles so that nothing hinders your coming back in?
Well, we have a campaign strategy. Let me add that I'm part of the party's strategy group, and we are working on a strategy towards the 2024 elections. I'm not sure I want to share in public our strategy towards voter apathy, particularly within our party, if it's significant enough.
Are you going to give 15,000, 20,000? Are you going to share money like we saw in the election?
We're not going to do that.
Never. No one is going to give any money this election.
We don't believe as a party that you need to pay.
Are you going to sanction any individual or any contestant or candidate who does that?
Well, these are conversations that are currently ongoing, and I will not preempt them.
The NDC will be holding its branch executive election this month, and the constituency, regional, and national follow in September. I think October, November will be for that purposes. What are your expectations on all this?
It's going to be keenly contested. We are a very democratic party. We believe in competition, and it's going to be competitive right from the branch level through to the constituency, to the awards, to the constituency, region, and national. It's going to be extremely competitive, and that would define the health of our party. In any case, if such elections are not competitive, if we don't have enough people showing interest, if you don't have that level of competition, then you must know that there's a challenge. There's a major challenge in your party.
So we won't see what happened in MPP in yours.
We're certainly not going to see people fighting, throwing chairs, cracking offices, and all that. I'm not sure. The NDC is not a violent party, and you will not see that.
I say, what's your assessment of the performance of the current national executives of your party, the NDC?
It is not up to me to sit at this table at a time when everyone is campaigning for election to give a verdict on the performance of our party executives. I think that what I can say is that on the whole, they have been consistent and the party is on course. The time for judging will be the time of elections
Sylvester,
to
some members,
determine
right,
who should hold what position.
some members of your party also claim that they are not really impressed with the performance of the national chairman, Mr. Oposo Ampofo. What do you make of their claims?
I haven't heard that. And let me add that I believe that both the chairman and the general secretary are doing a fantastic job. And what you are saying has not come to my
So
attention.
tell me, what about his performance impresses you, of Ofosu Ampofo's performance?
I think that for both the chairman and general secretary, I would want to lump them together because I've been working with both of them. They are both charismatic, they are both very eloquent, and they understand their role, whether as chairman or general secretary, and they are playing both roles to expectation. I am particularly impressed with both of them, and I believe that if both of them decide to contest their respective positions, they would both win.
Most people are saying that as Edunke said, the current general secretary should, after 17 years on, should move on to something bigger. Do you believe that he should move on to something bigger?
I think that's rumor. The general secretary is my good friend. He hasn't mentioned that to my hearing, and
he's done 17 years now.
It has been a rumor,
right.
And to the extent that nominations have not been filed,
but he has done 17 years. Should he move on to giving it to someone else to?
It has no lie in my mouth to determine what he should do. Our constitution does not place term limits.
Again. So should there be term limits for executives of political parties? Because for the main elections, we have 8 years or 4-year period. So with this, someone has done 17 years, 20 years, and is still in the party. So should we have limits for political parties?
I have been a strong advocate for term limits. And I have made proposals to the effect that we must have a maximum term limit of 3 terms. But to the extent that our constitution allows for an open-ended term limit, I'm not in a position to advise on what should happen to who and why. To the extent that those proposals are not operational, I think that everyone has his or her interests and how long one wants to serve in a particular position.
But again, some members of the party are encouraging your General Secretary, Mr. Aseedun Ketia, to contest the chairmanship.
I think this is a very personal
of the party.
issue.
Yeah, so from where you sit, do you see his chances, or what are his chances when he contests for the chairmanship of the party?
I think this is a very, very personal issue. It is not an issue. It doesn't lie in my mouth to determine that. And besides, these are at the level of rumor. And when we get to the bridge, we'll cross it.
There needs to be having these presidential elections or primaries, in the first quarter of 2023. Will you be contesting again?
No, I won't contest.
Why?
I think that I did contest the last time. I saw clearly what the verdict of our delegates and our party.
In 2019, Sylvester Mensah contested the flag bearership race for the NDC and lost, obtaining only 0.3% of the total votes. Sylvester, why?
I think that it was quite obvious that the delegates had an overwhelming support for one candidate, and that candidate had almost 95% of the votes. And that was a very clear language and a very clear signal for everyone.
So if you knew you were not going to win, why did you go?
I mean, how would you know you will not win?
I see.
How would you know you will not win? But I think that it is important for people to show their interest. And when you receive the verdict of the people, you have to realign. I think that our delegates have spoken clearly, and particularly in that contest, that their preference was for President John Mahama, and the results were very overwhelming. It is just logical and sensible for any person who contested that elections to align. It is no crime to contest for a vacant position, but after you have done so, and you have seen the reality of delegates' preferences, it's important to quickly pick up the pieces and begin to work for the party. What is of essence and of critical importance to every member of the party is for the party to win an election. I have confidence
because of time
in the verdict of our delegates.
Sylvester, as it stands now, most Ghanaians believe that former President Mahama will be the best option or best leader to lead the NDC in the 2024 general elections. He lost in 2016 and 2022. In 2024, what will do the magic for him?
Well, I think that there is a way in which this analysis has been negatively skewed. Indeed, it's important for us to appreciate that the two elections that we lost, one in 2016 and the other in 2020, were elections that traditionally neither the MPP or the NDC had ever won. In any case, you would observe that the very first elections that we lost in 2016 was at the end of our 8-year cycle. Besides, the second one that we lost in 2020 was a midterm for the MPP, mid of their 8-year cycle. No political party has broken that mid-year cycle.
But they want to break the 8. What do you make of breaking the 8?
Of course, they couldn't even break the 4. We all know how it all happened and how violence, people had to die, and all the things that happened for them to, let me say, broke the 4, which usually does not need breaking. But the struggles to get through the 4 is just comic relief. It is just comic relief to say that
rigged?
we are breaking the 8.
So did they rig the election?
I wouldn't go into that at this point. But we all know how armed men were at various police stations and how results were declared in other, as it were, polling stations. We all know how people had to be shot, how people died. 8 people died up to today. We haven't had any inquiry into any of that. And we all saw how clearly all that came together to deliver the outcome.
I see.
So I think Ghanaians are the judges on what exactly happened. What I do know is that the NDC would win the 2024 elections convincingly. That I can assure you. If you want to take a bet with me, we can do that.
I'm thinking, but yes, I'll take you on that. But it's been suggested that President Mahama should change his running mate. Do you agree? Should he change his running mate for 2024?
It does not lie in my mouth.
What do you think?
Foundation member. It does not lie in my mouth.
You lost an election twice.
What you need to understand
2016,
is that
2020. I'm asking you. It's been suggested that President Mahama should change his running mate. Do you think that the running mate was also a reason for, for the losing the election?
Well, I wouldn't want to go into that conversation. It will look rather too personal, and you would observe that I have avoided the temptation of talking about individuals and their preferences and their performances. These are issues that
the preference I
would want to put aside.
Madam Jane Nana was she the perfect running mate for former president?
I think that would be a matter of collective conversation and collective decision. I wouldn't want to preempt anything relating to that. Besides, we must also appreciate that our 1992 Constitution grants power to the, as it were, flag bearer to nominate his running mate. And he does that in consultation. And so at the end of the day, it does not lie in our mouth and in our conversation here to determine what should and what should not be. It is a matter for internal party conversation. Of course, if this question is asked in an internal party conversation, I would be willing to speak on it. But I'm not sure that it is reasonable to go into this discussion in public.
Great. Thank you so much for talking to the heart. I'll be speaking to Mr. Sylvester Mensah, leading member, in fact, a foundation member of the National Democratic Congress and the former CEO of the National Insurance Authority. What do you make of their chances in 2024? Share your thoughts with us on our social media platforms. You've been watching The Hard Truth. I am so grateful to you for your time. Thank you so much for watching. Catch a repeat of the program on Saturday at 2 p.m. My name is Nana Akusia Nida Santa Samuels. Good night.